For a long time, Hope Logan had told herself that endurance was a virtue. She had grown up watching women in her family survive storms by standing still, absorbing damage quietly, and convincing themselves that loyalty would eventually be rewarded. But the endless power struggles at Forrester Creations had begun to erode that belief, leaving Hope exhausted in a way that rest could not repair. Every day felt like another chapter in the same story, one dominated by egos rather than creativity, by territorial wars rather than vision. Hope was no longer inspired when she walked through the halls that once symbolized her future. Instead, she felt diminished, treated as an extension of legacy rather than an individual with her own ambition. The constant family battles, the shifting alliances, and the unspoken expectation that she should always be grateful had worn her down to the point where disappointment hardened into resolve. What hurt most was not open hostility, but subtle dismissal. Hope sensed that her ideas were being tolerated rather than championed, that her brand had become a bargaining chip in conflicts she neither created nor controlled. She watched decisions being made around her, not with her, and slowly came to understand that remaining at Forrester Creations meant accepting a ceiling she had never agreed to. Creativity thrives on freedom, yet Hope felt boxed in by history, by the weight of a name that promised prestige while quietly limiting growth. The realization unsettled her because it forced her to confront a painful truth. Staying loyal to an institution that no longer valued her voice was not noble, it was self-betrayal. At the same time, a quiet revolution was taking shape elsewhere. Katie Logan, long underestimated and frequently overshadowed, had done what few believed she would ever dare. With the financial backing of Bill Spencer and the creative authority of Eric Forrester, Katie launched her own fashion house under the name Logan. It was a bold move, not just professionally, but symbolically. The name alone challenged decades of dominance, reclaiming an identity often associated with conflict and redefining it as a banner of independence. For Katie, this was more than a business venture. It was a declaration that she would no longer build her worth inside someone else's shadow. Hope watched this development with growing intensity. What began as admiration slowly transformed into possibility. Logan represented everything Forrester no longer felt like. A clean slate, a space where creativity could lead rather than follow, where decisions were driven by vision instead of vendetta. In secret, Hope reached out to Katie, not with demands, but with vulnerability. She confessed her exhaustion, her growing sense of invisibility, and her fear that if she stayed where she was, her brand would stagnate into irrelevance. Moving Hope for the future was not an impulsive idea. It was the result of long nights spent weighing loyalty against survival, history against growth. Katie listened without judgment, understanding more than Hope realized. She knew what it meant to be dismissed, to be expected to compromise endlessly while others claimed the credit. When Hope expressed her desire to bring hope for the future to Logan, Katie recognized the magnitude of the moment instantly. This was not just a strategic gain, it was a convergence of values. Hope embodied youth, optimism, and modern relevance, exactly what Logan needed to establish legitimacy in an unforgiving market. Katie accepted without hesitation, convinced that Hope's presence would not only strengthen the brand but signal to the industry that Logan was not a vanity project, but a serious contender. The decision sent shock waves through Forrester Creations the moment it became known. What had been whispered as speculation hardened into disbelief, then fury. Brooke Logan reacted first, her anger fueled by a sense of personal betrayal. To Brooke, Hope's departure was not merely a professional choice. It was a rejection of family, of legacy, of everything Brooke believed she had built to protect her daughter's future. She could not separate the brand from the bloodline, and the idea that Hope would take her creation elsewhere felt like an erasure of shared history. Brooke's confrontation with Hope and Katie ignited a new family war, one rooted in ownership not just of designs, but of identity itself. Ridge Forrester was no less outraged, interpreting Hope's move as an unforgivable act of disloyalty. To Ridge, fashion was a battlefield, and Hope's decision amounted to switching sides in the middle of a war. He framed it as betrayal, refusing to acknowledge the conditions that had driven her away. In doing so, Ridge revealed the very rigidity that had pushed Hope to leave. For him, control had always been synonymous with protection, but Hope saw it for what it was, limitation disguised as concern. The confrontation between Brooke and Katie cut even deeper, reopening wounds that had never fully healed. Brooke accused Katie of exploiting Hope's frustration, of weaponizing the Logan name against the Forresters. Katie, for her part, refused to apologize for choosing herself or for welcoming Hope into a space where she would finally be valued. The argument exposed a fundamental divide between the sisters. Brooke clung to the belief that proximity to power ensured safety, while Katie embraced the risk of independence as the only path to authenticity. Their clash was not simply about business, but about the meaning of family in a world where ambition demands sacrifice. As Hope for the future officially transitioned to Logan, the fashion world took notice. What had once been an internal family dispute escalated into a full-scale fashion war. Forrester Creations, long accustomed to dominance, now faced a challenger driven by hunger rather than entitlement. Logan, though young and untested, carried a disruptive energy that unsettled established players. Hope and Katie found themselves under relentless scrutiny, their every move dissected for weakness. Skeptics dismissed Logan as a rebellion fueled by emotion rather than strategy, yet Hope understood that emotion, when focused, could become a formidable force. The challenges were immediate and unforgiving. Logan lacked the infrastructure and prestige of Forrester, forcing Hope and Katie to innovate relentlessly just to keep pace. Every collection became a test of credibility, every show a referendum on their right to exist. Hope, once shielded by the Forrester name, now stood exposed, her success or failure resting entirely on her vision. The pressure was immense, but it also awakened something within her that had long been dormant, confidence unmediated by approval. For the first time, Hope was not designing to satisfy a legacy, but to define one. Katie, too, faced her own reckoning. Steering a new fashion house demanded resilience she had rarely been allowed to develop. Financial risk, public criticism, and family backlash converged into a storm she could not escape. Yet, with Eric's steady guidance anchoring the creative direction, Katie found strength in collaboration rather than control. Eric's presence legitimized Logan in the eyes of skeptics, but it was Katie's conviction that sustained it internally. She was no longer proving herself to anyone else. She was building something that reflected who she had become. Hope's departure rippled outward, destabilizing relationships beyond the boardroom. Liam Spencer found himself caught between admiration and anxiety, torn by the realization that Hope was evolving beyond the version of her he had known. Her independence challenged not only their relationship, but his understanding of stability. As Hope stepped into a future defined by risk, Liam was forced to confront whether he could follow without resenting the distance it created. Their bond, already strained by history, now faced a test that neither could ignore. Within the Logan family, the drama intensified as loyalties fractured and reformed. Brooke struggled to reconcile her maternal instinct with her need for control, while Katie refused to retreat into appeasement. Hope stood between them, bearing the weight of their conflict even as she pushed forward. The fashion war mirrored the emotional one, each runway show echoing with unresolved resentment and quiet defiance. Every success for Logan felt like a provocation to Forrester, every setback an invitation for ridicule. Yet through the chaos, something undeniable began to emerge. Logan was not merely surviving, it was carving out space in an industry that thrived on reinvention. Hope and Katie learned quickly that legitimacy is not inherited, it is earned through endurance. Their journey was marked by doubt, sacrifice, and constant resistance, but also by moments of clarity that reaffirmed why they had taken the leap. The pain of leaving Forrester never fully faded, but it transformed into motivation rather than regret. In the end, Hope's decision to leave Forrester Creations was not an act of rebellion, but of self-preservation. It ignited a fashion war, fractured family ties, and reshaped relationships in ways no one could have predicted. Yet it also forced every player involved to confront uncomfortable truths about power, loyalty, and growth. As Logan and Forrester faced each other across the runway, the battle was no longer just about clothes, but about identity, autonomy, and the courage to redefine success on one's own terms. The revelations surrounding the bold and the beautiful for Monday, January 19th do not merely advance the plot in incremental steps. They signal a convergence of personal ambition, buried resentment, and generational conflict that threatens to reshape loyalties both at home and at work. At the heart of these developments stands Donna Logan Forrester, whose quiet instincts prove sharper than her gentle demeanor suggests. Donna recognizes that secrets, once allowed to linger too long, acquire a corrosive power of their own. And it is this awareness that drives her to push Katie Logan Spencer toward a moment of reckoning with Brooke Logan Forrester. Donna understands something that Brooke, for all her confidence, often forgets. Silence is never neutral. It always chooses a side, and too often it chooses the side of damage. Katie's hesitation to confess is rooted not in guilt, but in fear of what honesty might unravel. She has fought too hard to rebuild her independence, to fiercely claim a space that belongs to her alone. And the idea of once again being judged through Brooke's emotional lens fills her with dread. Yet Donna sees that avoidance will only intensify the fallout. Brooke's intuition is already circling the truth, sharpening itself on fragments of overheard conversations and unexplained confidence. Every unanswered question becomes an accusation, and Donna knows that if Katie does not speak now, the truth will surface later in a far more destructive form. The pressure Donna applies is not cruel. It is protective, born of love for both sisters and an understanding of how quickly family fractures when pride eclipses transparency. While this emotional standoff simmers among the Logans, another story begins to unfold on a different axis of tension, one defined by desire, rivalry, and the unspoken rules of family identity. RJ Forrester and Elektra Forrester find themselves drawn together in a way that feels inevitable, yet complicated by the very name they share. The series leans deliberately into the ambiguity of their connection, emphasizing the notion that sharing a surname does not equate to sharing blood, even as it tests the emotional boundaries that such proximity creates. There is an electricity between RJ and Elektra that neither is prepared to fully acknowledge, an awareness that grows sharper each time their paths cross. Each time conversation lingers a second too long. RJ, newly returned and noticeably changed, carries himself with a confidence that marks a departure from the uncertainty of his earlier self. This version of RJ is observant, intentional, and unafraid of discomfort, qualities that push him toward action rather than hesitation. When he considers asking Elektra out or probing gently into whether her heart already belongs to someone else, it is not recklessness that guides him, but clarity. He knows what he wants, and more importantly, he knows that waiting passively will only guarantee loss. Yet the truth he uncovers that Elektra is dating Will Spencer lands like a door slammed shut, not because it ends his interest, but because it complicates it. For RJ, Will's presence is more than romantic competition. It is the embodiment of an unresolved rivalry that has been simmering beneath the surface. Will represents both the ease of belonging elsewhere and the possibility of escape from Forrester expectations, and this duality fuels RJ's determination rather than extinguishing it. He is no longer the boy who retreats at the first sign of resistance. Instead, he evaluates the situation with a strategist's eye, weighing risk against reward. If Elektra's connection to Will is real and deep, then RJ knows he must tread carefully. But if it is merely circumstance, then he is willing to fight for the chance to be seen, even if doing so intensifies the strain between himself and Will. Elektra, caught between two worlds, feels the tension acutely. Her relationship with Will offers stability and warmth, Yet RJ awakens something less defined but more volatile, a sense of possibility that unsettles her in ways she cannot easily dismiss. She is aware of the optics, of how quickly affection can be misinterpreted when layered atop family legacy, and this awareness makes her cautious. Yet caution does not erase desire, it only forces it underground, where it grows stronger, more insistent. Elektra's internal conflict becomes a silent battleground, one where loyalty clashes with curiosity, and where every choice feels like a potential betrayal of someone she cares about. As personal tensions escalate, professional uncertainty casts a long shadow over Will's future. The turmoil between Katie and Brooke threatens to spill into the workplace, and Will, positioned uncomfortably between competing loyalties, senses that his role at Forrester Creations may no longer be secure. Office politics, once manageable, now feel volatile, shaped by emotional undercurrents rather than strategic decisions. Will understands that in an environment where allegiances shift daily, even competence offers no guarantee of safety. The possibility of being pushed out looms large, not as a punishment for failure, but as collateral damage in a conflict that predates him. Yet Will is not without options, and this knowledge both comforts and unsettles him. The Spencer empire stands ready, its doors open through Bill Spencer and Liam Spencer, offering a future defined by ambition rather than obligation. Alternatively, Katie's growing venture at Logan represents a chance to build something new, unburdened by the weight of Forrester tradition. These possibilities force Will to confront a deeper question about identity, whether loyalty should be inherited or chosen, and whether staying in a place that no longer values him is an act of integrity or inertia. Meanwhile, the secret at the center of Katie's professional life inches closer to exposure. She has already admitted to Brooke that she has secured a lead designer for her team at Logan, a confession that immediately triggers suspicion. Brooke's instincts sharpen as she presses for details, sensing that Katie's confidence is anchored in something more substantial than she is willing to admit. The moment Eric Forrester enters the room transforms curiosity into near certainty. Brooke reads the situation instantly, her skepticism flaring as pieces begin to align in her mind. Eric, however, remains unhurried. He has waited long enough to reclaim agency over his own narrative, and he refuses to rush the truth simply to appease Brooke's impatience. He understands the magnitude of what his decision represents, not only professionally, but symbolically. Aligning himself with Katie is not a rejection of family, but an assertion of autonomy, a reminder that experience carries value even when it challenges established hierarchies. Donna, recognizing the stakes, urges Katie to reveal the truth before Brooke's imagination fills in the gaps with resentment and accusation. The secret, once revealed, detonates with predictable force, yet Eric's resolve does not waver. For Eric, this moment is about more than a job title or creative control. It is a declaration that respect cannot be conditional, that age does not diminish relevance, and that authority earned through decades of dedication cannot be casually dismissed. Brooke and Ridge Forrester are forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that their influence has limits, and that Eric's patience should not be mistaken for submission. His insistence on teaching them to respect their elders is not punitive, it is corrective, aimed at restoring balance in a family that has grown accustomed to bending tradition to suit personal ambition. Katie, witnessing Eric's unwavering support, feels a surge of validation that steadies her resolve. For once, she is not navigating conflict alone, and this solidarity emboldens her to stand her ground, even as Brooke's disapproval threatens to escalate. Donna, too, finds reassurance in Eric's stance, seeing in it the possibility that family bonds can survive truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. The coming confrontation promises fireworks, yet beneath the tension lies the potential for recalibration, a chance to redefine relationships not through dominance, but through mutual respect. As Monday's episode unfolds, these intertwined narratives, romantic uncertainty, professional upheaval, and generational reckoning coalesce into a portrait of a family at a crossroads. Each character is forced to choose between familiarity and growth, between silence and honesty, between clinging to power and sharing it. The stakes are not limited to individual happiness. They ripple outward, shaping careers, alliances, and the very identity of the institutions they inhabit. In this moment of heightened emotion and shifting loyalties, The Bold and the Beautiful reminds its audience that drama is rarely born of malice alone, but of love strained by fear, ambition sharpened by insecurity, and truth delayed until it can no longer be contained.